Welcome everyone to my review of the BitFenix Prodigy M case. This case has been on the market for a while, but BitFenix were nice enough to send it over to me together with some other stuff to have a look at. First things first, yes, this is an orange case. If you don't like orange, well, there's good news. They produce this case in 6 different colors. Besides the color, let's take a look at the rest of the exterior design. It's a compact case with a minimalistic design, except for these handles on top, which are the same as on the bottom, where they function as feet. They are useful if you want to transport a case, as they're flexible and strong, and besides utility, they make the case look pretty damn cool. All the plastic parts around the case have also been finished with rubber coating to give a nice soft feel to it. I think this finishes up the case nicely. Now, as you can see, this Prodigy has a window. This is something they ship separately with the case, so when you buy this case with window, you'll end up with 3 side panels. When you take the case out of the box, you simply put the side panel with the front I/O on the other side and install a windowed panel here instead. What you do with the panel you're left with is up to you. To be honest, I would just use it to make a custom windowed side panel perhaps. If my modification doesn't work out, there's no trouble as I've got the factory window anyway. The factory window is, by the way, of good quality. I like the fact that they did not add a fan option on it, as that, in my opinion, mostly just ruins the point of a window in your side panel. Moving on the side panel that contains the front I/O, you'll find the power and reset button, power and hard drive activity LEDs, microphone and headphone jack, and 2 USB 3 ports. Unfortunately, when the side panel is on this side, the logos on the power and reset button are upside down. On the top of the case, you'll find a fan grill with dust filter, which you can easily remove with this latch. Underneath, you can install up to 2 120mm fans to intake cool air. There is also support, by the way, for a 240mm slim radiator. Behind the front panel, which can easily be removed, you'll find a lot of mesh. I was a bit puzzled at first when I noticed that it looked like you could install fans here, as your power supply would just obstruct them as it gets installed here in the front of the case. But the reason why this layout is like that is probably because BitFenix uses the same chassis for this Prodigy case as with the original Prodigy, where there was room left for fans. Using the same chassis is most likely for them a lot cheaper for during production, meaning that the price you pay stays lower too. So if you thought about installing fans here in the front in this Prodigy M case, I'm afraid that won't be possible. Nevertheless, this is not an actual problem with the case. Also, the fact that there is mesh here means that you can position your power supply in such a way that it can intake cool air. More fan options can be found on the bottom, where they already include one standard fan. But you can install a second 120mm fan or a 230mm fan to exhaust air. The fact that they exhaust rather than intake is rather irrelevant, as they would otherwise intake warm air from the power supply. Note that for this, BitFenix includes a plastic panel which you can hang on the bottom of the case in case you don't install any fans on the bottom at all. This way, no warm air from the power supply will rise up into the case. The plastic panel, by the way, is held into place with magnets. Now finally, a second 120mm fan is included for the rear, but if you prefer, you can change that with a 140mm fan. The Prodigy M also offers a lot of options for hard drives. On the back of the side panel containing the front I/O, for example, you can install 2 2.5-inch drives, let's say SSDs. On this bracket, which is installed on this side of the case, you can install another 3 SSDs, and on the other side another 2 3.5-inch hard drives. Note though that while you install drives on one side of this bracket, it will obstruct the possibility of installing more on the other, meaning that you can install a maximum of 2 SSDs and 2 3.5-inch drives at the same time. Finally, you can install another 2 3.5-inch drives on the bottom of the case. Note that for when you install the 3.5-inch drives, BitFenix includes screws and rubber grommets. Any other important information about the case is that it supports CPU coolers up to a height of 160mm and graphics cards with a maximum length of 320mm. The maximum length of the power supply is also 160mm, and the motherboard form factors that are supported are Mini ITX and Micro ATX. When sending the case over to me, BitFenix also included a couple of LED fans and LED strips, asking me to show you guys the case in the dark. So doing that, let's have a look at the Prodigy M in the dark. Note that I did not install the hard drive bracket on the side as it obstructs the view through the side panel. Perhaps if you install 3 SSDs there though, you might be able to show them off like that. Now, installing a system in the case is not made entirely easy by BitFenix. It's a compact case and you'll need to look ahead carefully when installing your components. First, when installing your graphics card, in the top, which is preferred as it gets cooled with the coolest air taken from outside the case, take note of the length of your card as it might obstruct room for a DVD writer or any other long 5¼ inch device in the front bay. Installing your graphics card there also gets rid of the option to install extra fans in the top. If you install a window in the case, you'll need to think about a few things too. By installing the side panel with the front I/O to the left, you will not be able to use the SSD cages on that side panel, as they will be hidden behind your motherboard tray with no access for cables. Also, when that side panel is on that side, cable management is not made easier. In fact, by having the front I/O on that panel, you'll need to have that panel near the case when installing everything in it, which is certainly most unuseful when you install a panel on the original right side. Cable management overall isn't the easiest thing to work out. The only real place to hide cables is above the power supply, but if you install many components, you'll need to plan ahead when routing cables. Having a large graphics card installed like this one here, with this motherboard, you'll need to route the front I/O cables behind that card before installing it, to be able to plug in the connectors. To be honest, I can keep giving examples of many cable management unfriendly things this case offers. My main complaint will be that I don't understand why BitFenix allows you to install so many hard drives and SSDs, forcing you to have a lot of cables in the case, by sacrificing many cable management options. For example, the case is very wide, which would be ideal for cable management room behind the motherboard tray. Yet they didn't give you this option to allow for more room for hard drives instead. To be honest, the result is that the case doesn't make much sense. Certainly as you combine it with a window. The window is very good, but if you plan to pack the case with a lot of gear without modifying the cable lengths and so on, the case won't look that nice on the inside. But nevertheless, I think the cable management problem can be fixed by using some patience and carefully selecting the right hardware, for instance a modular power supply and the motherboard with a practical layout and so on. All in all, I would like to conclude the review like this. The case is quite heavy and even more so with hardware in it. The handles to carry it around though are therefore quite practical, however, they make the case a bit wobbly even with weight inside it. The power and reset button kind of disappoint me as well, because they are not soft buttons but rather these simple buttons like you would find on cheap children's toys. And as discussed thoroughly, the cable management could have been much better. I would probably grab back to the original Prodigy case then. The only problem with that is that you can't install anything larger than a mini ITX in that one, making this version of the Prodigy better as it gives you more options. Even though all this sounds pretty bad, I must say that I love the look of this case. When having finally installed your computer inside it, it's a joy to look at. The case also offers very good cooling features as well as a dust filter for the intake fans. It allows for large graphics cards, high CPU coolers and a flexible interior that allows for many different PC layouts. So overall, I think this case certainly deserves an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you for watching this video review, and also thanks to BitFenix for sponsoring us.